Well, tearful Austrians have been laying flowers at the site of the attack. Let's bring in Deutsche Welle correspondent Thomas Sparrow, who joins us from Berlin. Thomas, hello. What more do you know about the victims and indeed the perpetrator?
It's a community in shock in Graz. It's a community in mourning, and it's shock and mourning that is also felt beyond Graz and beyond Austria, with several European leaders also showing their respects, also commenting on this very, very difficult situation. Especially difficult because some of the victims are said to be students from the school. Especially difficult as well because the shooter was one of themselves, also a former student, a 21-year-old, who nevertheless did not graduate from the school and then shot himself in the school. So this is something that is sending shockwaves way beyond Graz, especially because these kinds of shootings are very rare, not only in Austria, but also broader in the European Union. And obviously, there are many questions now, on the one hand, about the potential motive. Apparently, a letter was also found, and authorities are trying to identify what could have been the motive. One of the hypotheses that is being discussed now is that the shooter saw himself as a victim of mobbing and then decided to carry out this attack in revenge. But this is something that authorities are still discussing. Meanwhile, Graz, Austria and the European Union continue to mourn and continue to also discuss a potential response to what happened there in Austria.
Thomas, you say attacks like this are rare. How often do school shootings happen in Europe?
If you compare them, for example, to the United States or to other countries, they are indeed rare. But there are several communities in Europe that in recent years have been affected by these kinds of shootings. But experts and analysts point out that it's not only about shootings that there is concern in Europe. It's more about knife attacks or other acts of violence in schools. There is, for example, a current situation in France where there was a knife attack in a school. And this is something that you also see in other countries around Europe. And that's why experts, that's why officials are specifically calling for more awareness on the issue, but also for a broader discussion on what needs to be done to secure schools as much as possible in the continent.
Yeah. Is there suggestions, as we look at these pictures live from Graz, as family members, friends go to the site of this tragedy, are there suggestions, Thomas, that schools should be better protected?
There are absolutely suggestions on how schools could be better protected. Experts so far have mentioned awareness raising, which is something that already happens in many schools in Europe. So trying to raise awareness among teachers, among also other school officials, among students, and awareness raising also about what kind of potential signs could come from students that might then turn into violent acts in schools, whether it is a shooting or a knife attack or any other act of violence. So, for example, looking more carefully at how students use social media platforms, what kind of social media platforms use, what kind of social activities they have beyond that, any potential signs that could then lead up to a situation like that. That's one important element. A second important element is prevention. And a third one, which is now being discussed a lot in Austria and beyond Austria, is tightening gun laws, because one important element here was that the shooter had acquired those guns legally. So there's a big discussion now in Austria as to whether the country has laws that are lax and whether those laws should be tightened more, also in cooperation with other countries. In other words, whether the European Union should also do something to have more tighter gun laws in the continent.
Thomas, thank you.